The feast of St. Nicholas is celebrated by Eastern Orthodox Christians on December 19th. In the West, it's observed on December 6th. Now, St. Nicholas died in what is now Turkey on December 6th in the year 343. But that was on the old Julian calendar, which the Eastern Orthodox Church retained because the Gregorian calendar was proposed by those heretics over in Rome, Pope Gregory the 13th. And so there's all this dispute of when holy days occur. What we call Epiphany on January 6th is Eastern Orthodox Christmas, because religions, they just can't get along. And that's the way it is with every generation adapts a legend to suit their own purposes. And that is certainly true about St. Nicholas. But since he was a bishop in the areas which is now controlled by the Eastern Orthodox Church, I'm going to read the Orthodox version of the history of St. Nicholas from the website of the Orthodox Church in America. St. Nicholas, the wonder worker, Archbishop of Myra in Lycia, is famed as a great saint pleasing unto God. As the fruit of the prayer of his childless parents, the infant Nicholas, from the very day of his birth, revealed to people the light of his future glory as a wonder worker. His mother, Nana, after giving birth, was immediately healed from illness. And St. Nicholas, from his infancy, began a life of fasting. And on Wednesdays and Fridays, he would not accept milk from his mother's breast until after they had finished their evening prayers. The priest Nicholas displayed great kind-heartedness towards the flock, towards the afflicted who came to him for help, and he distributed all of his inheritance to the poor. And there was a certain formerly rich inhabitant who St. Nicholas saved from a great sin. The man had 3 grown daughters, and in desperation he planned to sell their bodies so that they would have money for food. The saint, learning of the man's poverty and of his wicked intention, secretly visited him one night and threw a sack of gold through the window. With the money, the man arranged for an honorable marriage for his daughters. He provided a sack of gold for each of the daughters in following years. St. Nicholas once saw the devil get on a ship, intending to sink it and kill all the passengers. At the entreaty of the despairing pilgrims, he calmed the waves of the sea by his prayers. And through his prayer, there was a certain sailor of the ship who had fallen from the mast and was mortally injured, but restored to health. Under the Emperor Diocletian, Bishop Nicholas, locked in prison together with other Christians for refusing to worship idols, sustained them and exhorted them to endure the fetters, punishment, and torture. And the Lord preserved him unharmed. In the year 325, St. Nicholas was a participant in the First Ecumenical Council. St. Nicholas, fired with zeal for the Lord, assailed the heretic Arius with his words, and also struck him on his face. For this reason, he was deprived of the emblems of his episcopal rank and placed under guard. But the fathers of the council agreed that the audacity of the saint was pleasing to God and restored the saint to the office of bishop. St. Nicholas is a patron saint of travelers, and we pray to him for deliverance from floods, poverty, or any misfortunes he has promised. I generally like St. Nicholas. Helping those who are poor, the imprisoned, traveling far from home. I do not like the fact that he punched a Unitarian in the face. We often look back in history and look at the people who we might be able to say maybe by their beliefs or philosophies were Unitarian or Universalist, I think the punch in the face disqualifies Nicholas. The Council of Nicaea is where the church decided the Trinity, that Jesus and the Holy Ghost were co-equal and identical, that 3 equals 1 in some mathematical, mystical equation. Arius was the one who argued that God is one and Jesus was not part of the Godhead. Apparently, Arius was winning the argument. Thus, Nicholas had to resort to force. But because I am also a Universalist, I will forgive St. Nick for his transgression. The tradition of gift-giving comes from the story of throwing bags of gold through the window. And some traditions say that the gold landed in the shoes of the young ladies or in their stockings. And thus children across many countries put their shoes out on December 6th, where they live, to receive gifts from St. Nicholas. And this is particularly Sinterklaas, the Dutch rendering of St. Nicholas, is the main day of gift-giving. About a week before the saint arrives in his day, and then he rides through the street in a carriage with a white horse. Also, places that you have lived, because whenever you go to a pawn shop, there are those 3 gold balls that often hang over a pawn shop door, and that is a symbol of St. Nicholas. I guess the higher calling of pawn shops is to reduce us from our poverty, really. I think their mission may have skewed over the years. Now, the English Father Christmas is quite separate from St. Nicholas. It really appeared in carols and was just someone who really was the bringer of the feast. It was the party time, it's Yule, come along. But then over the years, with the influence of the Americans and the Dutch, Father Christmas became resembling much more like Santa Claus. Santa Claus to America. There is a book by Washington Irving, who he pretended to be a Dutch historian and was telling the old Dutch legend. The sage Olaf dreamed a dream, and good St. Nicholas came riding over the tops of trees in that self-same wagon wherein he brings yearly presents to children. And he descended hard where the heroes of the Kamapaw had made their last repast. And he lit his pipe by fire, and he sat himself down and smoked. And when St. Nicholas had smoked his pipe, he twisted it with his hatband into his hatband, and laying a finger beside his nose, gave the astonished Van Cortlandt a very significant look. Then mounting his wagon, he returned to the treetops and disappeared. This idea of Santa riding an old airborne sleigh was codified and expanded by Clement Clark Moore, who published a poem called A Visit from St. Nicholas, which I read with the children earlier today. And he added the idea of reindeer and suggested that Santa was fat rather than tall and thin like Father Christmas or St. Nicholas. And this depiction was solidified by Unitarian cartoonist Thomas Nast, who perhaps in karmic retribution for Nicholas punching Arius in the nose, depicted the saint as a rotund elf with a beard, beginning in 1863. St. Nicholas's transition from historical figure to legend was completed in this editorial written by Francis P. Church, which appeared in the New York Sun. Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says if you see it in the sun, it is so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Virginia O'Hanlon. Virginia, your little friends are wrong. They have been affected by the skepticism of a skeptical age. They do not believe except they see. They think that nothing which is not comprehensible by their little minds, all minds, Virginia, whether they be men's or children, are little. In this great universe of ours, man is a mere insect, an ant in his intellect, as compared to the boundless world about him. As measured by the intelligence capable of grasping the whole of truth and knowledge, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. And you know that they abound and give you your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary world would be if there was no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias. There would be no childlike faith, no poetry, no romance to make tolerable this existence. We should have no enjoyment except in sense and sight. The external light which childhood fills the world would be extinguished. Not believe in Santa Claus? You might as well not believe in fairies. You might get your papa to hire men and watch all the chimneys on Christmas Eve to catch Santa Claus. But even if they did not see Santa Claus coming down, what would that prove? Nobody sees Santa Claus. But that is no sign that there is no Santa Claus. The most real things in the world are those that are neither children nor men can see. Do you ever see fairies dancing on the lawn? Of course not. But that's no proof that they are not there. No one can conceive or imagine all the wonders there are unseen and unseeable in the world. You may tear apart the baby's rattle and see what makes the noise inside. But there's a veil covering the unseen world, which not the strongest man, nor even the united strength of all the strongest men that ever lived, could tear apart. Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, romance can push aside the curtain and view the picture of that supernal beauty and glory beyond. Is it all real? Ah, Virginia, in this world there is nothing else real and abiding. No Santa Claus. Thank God he lives and lives forever. And 1,000 years from now, Virginia, nay, 10,000 years from now, he will continue to make glad the hearts of childhood. The historical St. Nicholas was most venerated for his generosity. And that is what continues beyond his death. But the price of this immortality is to be shaped by the needs of each generation. Things get added and subtracted, some legends stick, and others do not. During the Protestant Reformation, Protestant parents in Germany had a problem. The kids wanted to leave their shoes out for St. Nicholas because, not knowing the theological implications of honoring a Catholic saint, they wanted toys. So they said, no, St. Nicholas is not the person who brings the gifts, not on this saint's day that the papists celebrate. It is the Christ child, the Christkindl, who brings the gifts on Christmas Eve. And so that is how the name Kris Kringle became associated with Santa Claus, as the Protestants tried to wrest this legend from the hands of the Catholics. And then there's other things like reindeer. Where do they come from? And Mrs. Claus. And the first written account of reindeer in association with the legend of Santa Claus occurred in 1821 with an anonymous poem and portrait that was printed. "O Santa Claus, with much delight, his reindeer drives the frosty night o'er chimney tops and tracts of snow to bring this yearly gifts to you." During an 1822 interview, New York's Troy Sentinel editor Orville Holley questioned the booklet's author about the topic of reindeer, and though he did not identify the author, Mr. Gilley responded, "Dear sir, the idea of Santa Claus was not mine, nor was the idea of reindeer. The author of this tale but submitted the piece with little added information. However, he should be noted that he did mention the reindeer in a subsequent correspondence. He stated that far in the north, near Arctic lands, a series of animals exist, and these hooven and antlered animals resemble the reindeer and are feared and honored by those around. As you see, he claims to have heard they could fly from his mother being an Indian of the area." Now, Clement Moore named the reindeer and made sure there were 8 of them. And there were 8 reindeer from 1827 till 1939, when Robert May, working for Montgomery Ward, wrote the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The Rudolph story reached its heights when his brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, developed lyrics and melody for the song, and the song was recorded by Gene Autry in 1949. Mrs. Claus. Being a bishop, we do not know that St. Nicholas ever had a wife. But she first appears in an 1849 James Reese story, A Christmas Legend. In 1875, he wrote a letter from Santa to his daughter Susie, and he addressed it from the palace of St. Nicholas in the moon. And he signed it, "Your loving Santa Claus, whom people sometimes call the man in the moon." And where he got this notion and why it never took, he was one of the most popular authors of the day, but somehow that one didn't catch on. We just figured that if there were reindeer, it must have been up near the Arctic someplace. Santa Claus and his works was written by George Webster and illustrated by Thomas Nast and published in 1869 by McLaughlin Brothers of New York. And it tells of Santa's work making toys for all the good little boys and girls around the world, and has the details like flying reindeer and his toy sack, and also the depiction of Santa as a fat, jolly elf. And also has Santa, there's a picture of Santa looking in a telescope from the North Pole, watching all the children, which I think to actually watch us, it'd be a better vantage point if he was at the moon, or the curvature of the earth wouldn't affect it as much. But Mark Twain did not win that argument. Also depicted Santa as checking this giant book, listing the good boys and girls. And then when Santa is portrayed in the 1946 movie The Miracle on 34th Street, he went by the name Kris Kringle, and thus solidified the merger of St. Nicholas and Kris Kringle in the American imagination. And this myth of St. Nicholas continues to evolve. The 1994 movie, The Santa Claus, suggests that Santa occasionally dies by falling off the roof. And if you pick up the suit and wear it, then, you become Santa. And there's modern movies on the Hallmark and Lifetime channel that portray Mr. and Mrs. Claus having a daughter or son who desperately needs to be married by Christmas Eve to save the family business. All of these films carry the theme of Francis P. Church's letter to Virginia, that it's necessary to believe in magic during this skeptical age. And perhaps that goes back to St. Nicholas' thoughts himself of somehow 3 equaling 1, which is carried through Christianity as a non-mathematical myth with much power. If Santa Claus exists 10,000 years from now, he's likely to be very different than he is portrayed today. Because the humans that exist, if we exist 10,000 years from now, will be different. My wife found this tie that we bought from Goodwill years ago with an alien with a Santa hat. Perhaps that will be the legend of Santa in years to come. But the hope for our survival comes back to the basic characteristic of St. Nicholas and what was described in the giving economy, that sense of generosity. That is the eternal life of Santa Claus. What type of planet will we give to the following generations? And what stories of kindness do we share with our children and grandchildren? May we bless and be blessed.